Okay. Are we ready? I think we're ready to go here. 3, 2, 1. Action. Welcome back to The Broken Investor. This is our third episode, and like the thumbnail suggests, we're going to talk about how to start investing if you're broke or have no idea about taking that type of control over your life and putting something away. We're going to talk about that because that's one of the things people will say. It was like, well, why don't you invest in something? And they say, well, I'm broke, or I don't have any money, or I'll do it when, this happens, or when event X happens, or when event Y happens, and they just don't end up doing it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience and things you can do to get started, because the thing about this game is you just have to get started. That's the difference between being in it and not, and it's very important and valuable to be in it. So, like we always say, if you're clicking on this channel, it's because you're probably broke and you want to become an investor. So we're going to really break down what it is from going to absolute ignorance in investing and a little bit of finance to becoming a little more and working towards being the person you want to be. So nothing in this video you see is financial advice. Everything is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the video so you can be notified of new content and help the algorithm to bring this content to people who need it. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get into it. I got started by feeling very frustrated. I started seeing that in my career, I was making some pretty good money, but the costs started mounting and my lifestyle was changing and becoming less because my wages didn't keep up with inflation. And since the COVID pandemic, we can really tell that prices have gone up. There's been a lot of inflation, and the dollar just is not as powerful as it used to be, as it has always, since the beginning of its history, lost value. Except we really have felt it since the pandemic. So I started looking at myself and seeing what changes can I make. And the first change I realized I had to make was the people I was around. I was around a lot of people that like to go to the club, like to party, like to spend money going out, going for drinks, going for dinner, going to shows, a very heavy social life with a lot of spending. So I realized that I was falling into those habits, and sometimes even trying to keep up with them, because people that love that stuff, it's full send for them. And so you want to be a social individual because you want to be around your peers, you want their acceptance, and so you do that too. So that was the first thing I did. It took a while. It took a while to do, was to start changing the people I was around. There was a point when there was no one around. But in my situation, it was better to have no one around than people that are going to potentially be a factor in me falling into those habits. So that was the first thing. The second thing was looking at how I spend my money and where that money goes. And I started seeing gaps in where I could stop spending and putting that money into something else. And it doesn't have to be really crazy things. It could be something like, let's say you go out and you buy coffee every day for work, or you buy lunch every day for work. Maybe not buy lunch or a coffee every day at work, maybe just once a week, or maybe you take it from maybe just once a week and you just do it on payday, right? Your little payday treat, because, we all want to reward ourselves, and that's where a lot of this behavior gets out of hand. I was working so hard that I didn't get to cook dinner, and so now I'm gonna just buy lunch again. So controlling your mind and emotions and impulses and way of thinking is also a huge part. So again, you don't want to take all the joy out of your life. If you really like going for that coffee, from the coffee shop across the street from work, whatever, get it on payday. Try to limit it instead of making it, instead of you basically putting your paycheck into that coffee shop. So those are the little things you can kind of start with. And For me, it was also, buying beer. Like I like to buy, yeah, I like to drink a beer. And for me, it was really limiting how much beer and what kind of beer. That's expensive. That's very expensive, more expensive than coffee. So for me, that's kind of one of the things. And what else? I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I think those are like the most real world examples for me, where I saw a lot of money, being spent. So what I started doing was again limiting them and then putting that money into something else instead of saving, because saving is really hard. Saving, like for me, it's hard, and it's very hard to save in this financial climate because of inflation, and the power of the dollar is literally decreasing every year, all currencies every year. So to be saving money year over year really is not as effective as investing into an asset that will rise in value over time. And on this channel, basically, precious metals and cryptocurrency are kind of the things we're going to start focusing on. But there's tons of things you can invest in, tons and tons and tons and tons, tons. But for this channel at this time, precious metals and cryptocurrency. So what I started doing was I started buying an ounce of silver every payday. That was how I started. So I started buying an ounce of silver every payday because when I got into crypto, I kind of just, instead of DCAing into crypto, which is dollar cost averaging, which is buying a little bit over time, I just scooped up, a larger amount right away and just sat on it. So what I started doing was buying the ounce of silver, and then when I could, I started doing the same with my cryptocurrency, putting a little bit whenever I could, diverting the funds from the fun and putting it towards these assets. And I know all of us can kind of find those little gaps in our lives, where we think, oh, well, we'll just hit the drive-through, or oh, we're just not going to cook dinner, or oh, it's just easier to buy that coffee. Those are the major things. Like, you'd be surprised how much money you'd spend on that stuff. A lot of you are probably very controlled in that, and you don't do it at all. And it might be something like streaming services. You have like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 streaming services, and those streaming services are what, like $10.99 to $25 a month? Who knows? Like, that stuff adds up too. So it's really watching your behavior is one of the biggest keys, and putting value on your goal, which is starting to invest. Starting to have that little bit of cash going into something else. That is probably the biggest takeaway from this video, is the self-control, the emotional psychological state, and the self-monitoring, because it's very easy to have a really rough week. Let's say you've done this really good. You stayed away from the coffee shop, or you stayed away from the restaurants or from the bar or whatever, and you have a bad week at work. An old friend that you've been trying to get away from because of how they spend calls you up and says, hey, what are you doing? It's Friday. Let's go out. It's having the willpower to identify the cause, the reaction, and the psychology in your own brain to control that. Because I was at a point sometime when I would have said, yeah, let's go. But now, it's a mindfulness thing. So that's really the way to kind of get started on investing if you're broke, is just watching yourself, looking at your bank account, seeing where there's little bits of money that you can put in. I'm not saying, don't make your car payment, don't, pay your rent or mortgage and put that into something. Not at all. I'm looking for the little gaps here, like I've been saying, coffee shops and the lunches. And maybe you're buying that 1 ounce of silver every payday, or maybe you're putting your whatever your amount is. I'm not going to tell you what it is. It could be anything. Maybe it's $5, maybe it's $50, maybe it's $500 that you can free up a month, putting that into maybe your Bitcoin or your silver or whatever your asset is. You might already have something. But that's pretty much the first step to investing while you're broke. And there's not much more I can say about it. So I think we're going to leave it there. We'll have a little bit of a shorter video today because the last one was, ooh, it was long. But yeah, that's how to start investing while you're broke. And then the people you're around with is a huge one too. Be around people that have those goals that you want to have, and leave the people that don't. So with that said, this has been episode 3 of The Broke Investor. We'll catch you on the next one. I need a better camera.